I wouldn't worry about it. I don't think I get but 3 people ever watching live videos, but where everyone's bored and quarantined, every now and again they'll end up on YouTube or Twitch to watch a replay. So that's probably as much as far as we'll get. Unless Zach sees it, and then he'll turn up and bug us with some questions, probably. Yeah, I really didn't have to start planned. Welcome in, Mike. You are at Mike or something like that on Twitter, right?
At Mike me up with 2 P's.
Mike me up, that's right. You're the first one that turns up when I type in MI, so I never have to learn the rest. So that's been very useful to me. Yeah, I saw you tweeting the other day about how great Preston Williams was, so I thought we should have you on to talk about why everyone should target this undrafted free agent. That was about the gist of it, right?
Yeah, the exact opposite. I actually like Preston Williams, believe it or not.
Yeah. No, you can't do that. It's like I like everyone. There's way too much. It's getting past nice. I'm actually going to give you reasonable advice part of the season and getting into. I'm going to stand on my hill. Like it's time we stop hedging. I like it from here on out. I like to put myself on a ledge where I can be owned. Like it's
on the hill. It's way more fun that way, anyways.
So many people are so good at saying everything in a way that you can never really call them out for it later. And it's like, well, where's the fun? Where's the fun in that? In the fact you actually really like everyone, but don't draft these guys. I mean, come on. But no, you were arguing that Devanta Parker is a great value, right?
Yep. I think he's incredible value right now.
He's going inside the top 100 picks, though, right?
I don't know. I mean, ADP is always tricky, right? Like in the last 2 to 3 drafts that I've done, I think the earliest you went was in the 9th round of Superflex, and then in the DLF Champions, I got him in the 11th. So I'd say like somewhere in that 8 to 10 range, basically. But
yeah. DLF has him 74th, and Preston Williams is the real wide receiver you want. I mean, he's 113, but there's definitely a range there. I can accept that. How about wide receiver ranks? Where would you put him if you were to rank Devanta Parker? Maybe that's easier than ADP.
Yeah, so I mean, I have him ranked in that wide receiver 3 range, so somewhere in the I think mid to high 20s. Last time I checked my rankings, but yeah, that's kind of where I have him.
That's decent. So you think he's a top 24 wide receiver? That's more than a wide receiver 3.
Top 30 wide receiver. But yeah.
No, Spaceman's found us. Hey, Spaceman, how you doing? It's just a 3. I think we should probably just add Spaceman to the chat. It's 37th overall in wide receiver ADP, but that includes rookies. Preston Williams is not far. Well, it's pretty far off at wide receiver 50. I'm asking because I thought it'd be good to like give an idea of what we're talking about here in terms of value. Like if you have him as a top 3, you're not expecting top 24 production, or you think you can get that for the price of a wide receiver 3. Which one are you saying?
I think you can get wide receiver 2 production for the price of a wide receiver 3. I mean, very similar to someone like Robert Woods, for example, right? Who's going in that like high 20s, like wide receiver 27, 28, but he's like producing at the high end of a wide receiver 2 for the past 2 years.
All right, that's neat. Yeah, I kind of want to start just team level almost, like, because one of the interesting things I've been noticing trying to make projections for 2020 is Miami's passing attempts have kind of been, well, it's got some of the most variance over the last 3 years, put it that way. They were over 600 twice and then under 500 once. And under 500 is particularly low, really, over the last 3 years in the NFL. And, this isn't going to happen. But teams that produce 2 top 24 wide receivers on average pass about 594 times, and Miami being over 600 twice. It just kind of, the 2 numbers collided in my head in a very ugly way. You don't think there's any chance both of these guys hit the top 24? We're not talking about that kind of situation, right?
No,
it happens about twice a season, 1.5 times a season or so. Yeah. All right. So, but do you think Miami's in the passing attempt range where we can expect a top 24 wide receiver?
I think so. I mean, I guess it depends on like where their quarterback situation is going to be, right? I mean, going into it, people are thinking that it was going to be a Tua plus Fitzpatrick. Kind of Tua's riding the bench for a bit as he gets healthy with Fitzpatrick there. I mean, I love Fitzmagic for fantasy. So if he's out there slinging it, I definitely see someone finishing in the top 24. And I think
We just can't get over the one Fitzmagic season, can we? We just, that's happening.
we can't.
I saw someone posting the other day. That's when we think of it. Jameis Winston versus Fitzpatrick, and they're both very similar, but Winston is actually superior, which is probably the only time you get to say that. In most of the things that you care about over the long haul. Of course, Fitzpatrick's got a longer career to drag his average down, so maybe Winston will end up in that range as well. Yeah. But yeah, Fitzmagic's definitely capable of bringing the magic. We do know that. Yeah. All right, so Miami, you're not hot on the team. This isn't you expecting the team to explode.
No, it's not. It's not like I don't think they're going to be like a top offense by any means or anything like that. They're still pretty bad. I mean, they're in the early stages of the rebuild. I like where they're going, like maybe long term, in that maybe 2 to 3 years. But I mean, it's going to be pretty similar like this year to prior years.
Yeah, because if we go through the player level, Parker's already weird. I mean, weird for a whole bunch of reasons. One, because he was something of an analytical miss, at least for the first. What is it now? 5 years of his career?
Yep.
And where he was analytically, he was a pretty good prospect with a young breakout age and everything else. I was checking him out the other day because someone was bragging about their hit rate. And I honestly forget sometimes that's the kind of thing people are proud of. And I was looking at mine and cackling at the fact mine was better. But also the one that I care about is mostly miss rate. And, going high on players in the first round, I wouldn't say I'm particularly above average, but identifying the misses in the first round of the NFL draft, I think if I push it back to where I've been playing, I'm at like an 87% success rate at predicting the miss. But since I've been producing ranks and stuff, it's like 100%. And so, but that's misses in the first round. Devanta Parker is one of the exceptions because he wasn't one I was projecting as a miss and ended up missing. The reason he's weird in that way, that's all right, I didn't mean to get into that. It's just on my mind recently. Is that wide receivers, especially with first round draft capital, don't tend to break out after their third year, let alone after their fourth. Yeah. So he's in this weird sample. It's not like we can say, and what happens normally after that is X, because there is no normally. Like that doesn't happen, right? You've got Kenny Britt. Kenny Britt's the only one I can think of that had 1,000 yards after not doing it through the first 3 years of his career with first round draft capital. He did it in year 8, and in year 9 he sucked again. So that's a historical comp for a late breakout like this. Do you think Preston Williams? Do you think the breakout last year? Well, why do you think he finally broke out last year? Maybe that's the question.
I mean, he wasn't doing too hot in the beginning of the year, right? When Josh Rosen was there, I mean, Fitzmagic kind of covered this a little bit, but Parker is someone that's like a momentum player. So if he doesn't get momentum early in the game, he's basically like a non-factor. And if you watch like some of the games, like Fitzpatrick made it obvious that he was trying to like get his guy the ball to kind of get him going. And then also early on in his career, he just like struggled with injuries like every single year from what I remember, with the exception of maybe his third year. But every year he seemed to be like hurt, missing time, missing training camp, what have you. So, I mean, it's really hard to like kind of judge on stuff like that, but that's like what we see on the surface level, at least.
Hat tip spaceman. Yeah, but again, we've seen that before. We've seen a lot of players miss time because of injuries or because of suckage. In the case of Laquan Treadwell, and they still don't normally bounce back. I've never heard anyone refer to a wide receiver as a momentum player before. I'm honestly not quite sure what to do with it. So what I'm going to take away is that you think the ball was being forced to him after the first half of the season, right?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. He's getting fed for sure. If we look at like his passing volume from transition from Josh Rosen to Parker, I mean, when I say fed, I mean like just like in terms of momentum in the game, I could definitely see like maybe this is a myth. Like if I think about it in terms of like basketball, where like where you get hot. Remember like the old NBA game where you would like sink like three pointers and then you're all of a sudden you're on fire.
Right.
That's kind of what I took away from when Fitzmagic made that comment about Parker.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with you on Parker. I think he's really interesting, and I think where he's going, he's someone I don't mind speculating on at that value. Although I did see, when you're looking at the wide receivers he's being drafted around, there's a lot more wide receivers I kind of want as well, if not over him, compared to Preston Williams, who's going like below or just ahead of a very overdrafted McCall Hardman and some other players I wouldn't have interest in. So it's just a lot easier to get Preston Williams, which brings me like I don't mind the Devontae Parker love at all. It makes a lot of sense to me, but versus Preston Williams, if we don't think there's two top 24 wide receivers on the team and it's going to be one or the other, like I like that value obviously better than Williams, but let's not hedge. If I'm going to choose one, like I like what Preston Williams did better.
Yeah, I mean,
because he was the one being fed at the start of the season when it wasn't being forced because there was no one else on the depth chart. He was the one who had, more. Well, he had a higher rate of red zone touches, essentially, because he was used in the red zone more often on the time that he was on the field before I think it was his ACL got torn, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which is a worry, to be fair. So he was getting much more valuable opportunity at the start of the season, not when the depth chart became diminished because there wasn't someone else on there. And that just seems like a better indication of who's better when they're both on the field.
Yeah, so that might be the case, but I think like my perspective on this whole thing is like there's other pieces of information that I'm trying to take into account since that's happened. So since that's happened, I mean, one, they made the quarterback change. Preston played most of his time with Josh Rosen, I believe. He played a couple with Fitzmagic as well. And then second, like Parker got paid, right? I mean, at the end of the day, like that's a pretty strong signal to me in terms of extending his contract. And if he was like really, really bad when being given the ball towards the end, I'd probably be a lot more worried. But he wasn't. Like he was pretty damn good. And like the most memorable game that I could remember is when Parker basically went up against Stephon Gilmore at the end of the season there against the Patriots. And like he took Stephon Gilmore, who's arguably one of the best cornerbacks in the league, through the shredder. So, and so like it's just like those pieces of information I'm trying to take into account. And like I want job security. I know he has job security. And with Preston, I just don't have those same, the same safety blankets.
Well, I don't know, he has job security. We think he does. And it's a good idea to follow the money. I don't want to object to it. Just we don't know that at all. NFL teams drop cap constantly. And this is a player they constantly have not want to be proved wrong with. That's the good thing, especially as someone who was drafting Devontae Parker back when he was a rookie. Like he's one of the few rookies that the team just kept rolling over their bet because of, I guess, sunk cost. And, 8 games at the end of his 5th-year season, tearing up one good quarterback, or a couple, let's just say he tore all the good cornerbacks. Like, that's on the back of a 5-year history of him not doing any of that. And I know career arc, I guess, is mattering to me a little bit. You've got a rookie coming in as an undrafted free agent, forcing his way onto the field, doing everything Devontae Parker did in the last half of his 5th season, but in the first half of his rookie season. That's just a lot more impressive to me.
Was he as good as Parker was down the stretch early on? I don't think he was.
How do you want to measure it? One of the most predictive stats we've got is like WAPA, right? So
Yeah,
weight adjusted air yards, essentially. They have virtually identical WAPA. And again, Parker did it in 13 games and Preston Williams did it in 8.
Yeah.
And again, as an undrafted free agent rookie, that's a lot more impressive than a 5th-year first-round pick to me. Because I mean, again, I'm accepting that Miami's a little in this particular situation. The draft capital still seems to matter, but usually it doesn't by this point.
Yeah, normally it doesn't. I mean, it's a fair push. Like, I think when it just comes down to it, like I'd still like to follow the money. And I understand that definitely teams can definitely drop, and we just saw Brandon Cooks, for example, and even guys like Nuke get kicked to the curb for salary concerns. But at least in the near term, I mean, in this next year, I think he's kind of earned the opportunity, and I view it as his to like kind of lose back to Preston Williams, because if you're an undrafted free agent, you're constantly fighting that uphill battle, right? And even though draft capital shouldn't matter in the 5th year, I think that I don't really make the assumption that NFL GMs are rational on a base level.
That's fair.
So that's kind of like where I'm coming from.
But that's the thing. I'm trying to take it. You're betting that the coaches are going to be rational, and I'm saying the players are going to force the issue. And this player's been more impressive with less going for him. or as impressive or less going for him. That to me makes me lean Williams a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that NFL GMs actually use some of these more advanced metrics, do you think they look at the Whopper, or do you think they look more
No,
at
but I
like,
think they understand when they're getting what they're getting from a player. Like, Blair Andrews has shown that players that are efficient in their first year are actually much more likely to get more opportunity in their second year. And so, however they're measuring it, they're able to notice they're getting how much they're getting back for how much they're putting in to some extent. And Miami, maybe no one knows what a number is. I don't know. It's not exactly, not exactly the franchise I think of when I think of advanced metric driven franchise, but it just like targets per game. If you even want to go cross per game stats, their seasons are remarkably similar. However simply you want to measure the player, except for maybe total receiving yards. But again, you've got one player playing for 13 games and one player playing for 8. And the rate, the value, and again, if we want to talk about the players themselves, which I kind of do. That's what it comes down to me. Your argument or your point about the money definitely makes sense. And so the only way it turns out to be Williams, if only one of them ends up in the top 24, is if the players force the issue. Yeah. And I always kind of think at wide receiver, they have that ability. And I'm really encouraged to see Devanta Parker become some of what his promise was in the league. I do think he's a good player. But Preston Williams kind of overcame a lot in order to get his opportunity, and then did pretty much the best Parker has ever done in his first year as an undrafted free agent. That to me means maybe this player has the ability to force the issue a little bit more when they're both on the field. Now, something that I remember about your thread was about when they were on the field, though. Didn't you compare their actual performances when they're on the field? Because I haven't looked game by game.
No, I was looking at Miami splits. So like what Miami looked like with Josh Rosen. So like in the first 5 weeks, they had like
quarterback split.
Total offense. They had like 176 passing yards, and then the remainder, which is when like Parker started lighting it up as well, they had like 344 yards of offense and 266 yards passing. So the offense as a whole. That's why it's always like challenging for me to do splits, and I know you hate splits too. It's like I can't.
I try to, but sometimes they're useful.
It's like hard to isolate for like what factor is really contributing to that, right? Is the split for Parker solely because Preston Williams got hurt? Is it because they switched from Rosen to Fitzmagic? Is it because the offense picked up as a whole? Like I don't really have the right answer for that, but those are like the certain factors I was trying to dig into, basically.
Technically, everything I was saying on the Preston Williams side is a split, or the problem with a split. And again, when you've got limited information, you have to go with what you've got. Like I do hate splits, especially when they're used to project forward. It's just a fallacy of this player got 3 touchdowns in his first game. He's due 90 million touchdowns over the course of his career. And it's easy to fall into it. So I try to remember to hate snaps because it's more memorable than, be careful. But yeah, it makes sense. And, just when I'm talking about the games they played, essentially it's got the same problem. We don't know what happens with a larger sample. Maybe Parker forces his way past Williams, even if he was still on the team without an ACL problem. And that's, you haven't even tried to hammer him for having an ACL problem. And one of the reasons I think he was undrafted or less touted, perhaps. I know you mentioned some off-field problems, which sound horrific. So it's not like I'm arguing for a great guy or anything. Not that I know him, but he only played 3 and 4 games, both of his first 2 seasons. So he really only played 1 full season at the age of 21, which is why I had a later breakout season. So I apply, I have tropes that I argue, and if you don't see him play 8 games or more before the age of 20, you can't really judge him too harshly for having an older breakout age. That's roughly what I do. And again, in that last season at age 21, he was phenomenally productive, became the wide receiver 1, despite that being the only year he played for them significantly, had a 46% dominator rating in that single year. And so he was a really good prospect in that 1 year. We just know less about him because he didn't play ages 18 to 20. But we do know the first year he gets to the NFL, which is an even harder level, he pushes his way onto the depth chart, earns on a rate basis a similar amount of production and opportunity, and in fact, a higher amount of valuable opportunity in the red zone. Again, he had fewer touchdowns, but over a smaller period of game. But yeah, I think that's the overall argument. I think that's I would like to keep hammering it away at it to make it 30 minutes long. But at the end of the day, that's what we're saying. Both are really good values right now, being underlooked because they're on a bad team. But plenty of top 24 wide receivers come from bad teams.
Yep.
And it's just normally not the proving ground where you like to hunt. But when there's already one there, like Jarvis Landry was there for years and did just fine, for example. And I can make an argument that, Preston Williams has always been pushed down by better competition, such as Landry. But I think to compare Preston Williams to Landry at this point would be way too split argument. For me, he's obviously
Parker to Landry.
Sorry, no, Preston. That's what I could say that every time a better player is on the team, like Landry, Devontae Parker falls into the background. So maybe Preston Williams can do that. But we just haven't seen enough of Preston Williams to compare him to someone as good as Jarvis Landry. So, it's a little bit of a fallacy there on my own part. But I think that's it. You're betting on either way you go. And you can get both, frankly. But I wouldn't recommend stacking your depth chart with Miami players necessarily. But if you miss on one, I don't mind taking miss on Parker. I don't mind taking the cheaper bet on Preston Williams, because he did show a lot in his first year, considering his career arc and how little he had going for him in terms of, like we said, draft capital. But Parker's been paid, and it's unlikely that both hit the top 24. So I think we actually got there. I think that's all of it. We're just going to be passing that back and forth, right? Is there anything else we're missing?
I don't think so. Those are the key things that I think of when it comes to the situation. And dude, this coming from I was like all out on Parker, man. I thought I left this guy for dead,
right,
and I
me too.
I thought he was totally fraudulent. So to kind of see him make this giant leap in his fourth year was a bit shocking to me. So I'm still cautious, but I'm optimistically cautious. That's how I would put it.
I get it, and especially when you notice that he's going that late, right?
Yeah.
Outside the top 24, and he's already had a top 24 season. That's just kind of always a good bet to make. So yeah, that was my reaction to your tweet. I retweeted it, and I was like, yeah, I agree with that. And then you mentioned Preston Williams. I was like, wait, that's an undrafted free agent. Those are my guys. You can't come at my undrafted free agents. Horrible though their off-season antics may be. I was going to mention some vacated target stuff there, but I don't have it. Can you think of anyone that's leaving the Miami Dolphins? I honestly can't.
No, because I think Albert Wilson is still there, right? Albert Wilson's still there. So
yeah, I think he's still on the depth chart.
Yeah.
And something that I've recently been poking around in is added targets using the same logic.
Yep.
If players come to the team, and interestingly enough, the majority of breakouts happen in the most stable of situations in terms of targets leaving or targets arriving. Interestingly, and the rate of hit it isn't as high. But the majority of breakouts happen when the team has lost and added an average or below average number of targets, interestingly enough. And since I can't see a lot of depth charts happening in Miami, I almost want to make that kind of argument too, but I'm nowhere deep enough in it that I can actually push it.
Why do you think that is? Is it just because overall coaching stability? Is it
coaching
noise that's causing up and downs in targets, or what's causing it?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I don't know that I will know. My main problem, as much as an ass as I am about it on Twitter, is that I hate numbers that no one's even bothered to test. It's this means wonderful things. I'm like, can you answer one simple question about the history of it? No. Then you don't know that yet.
Yeah.
And vacated targets is almost the worst. Now, John Daigle tracks him, and I DM'd him, and he's going to try and dig up. So I know he's done his research, right? But most people saying vacated targets, Evan Silva obviously knows, but most of us just bantering around about missing opportunity. We have no idea if it means anything. I don't. Yeah. I have never read an article or seen a history of it. And I'm so I know I'm pretty confident that no one else has. And I hate, because that's how stats get a bad name. It's this means this, and then it doesn't. And then someone finally does the work and oh, actually, no, that's not how we can use it. But no one trusts it anymore when you find the utility. So I'm not sure I'm going to be the one to uncover the mystery of vacated targets, but I can create a data set, and I can tell you what I can tell you about it, and then hopefully it'll spark some information in someone else too, and we'll finally get to the bottom of it. Now, what I think I'm seeing, and I'm not finished yet, is exactly what you said. I think we're catching some portion of team intent, which is why it's got so much variance in it, because you can intend as much as you want.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just, you can intend. I don't think Miami honestly ever intended for Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs to be their two best wide receivers. Teams are remarkably, like we just said, addicted to their draft capital. Like they really tried to force the issue by literally drafting a first-round wide receiver after they both started to break out, and then tried to force him onto the team for 2 years and found out, no, these two are just phenomenal. Okay, we'll keep them off the field. So intention is always going to have that kind of variance. But yeah, especially when I started to dig into the idea of added targets and net targets and the fact that stability is where most breakouts happen, I think what I'm seeing, at least in my Muggins kind of mind, is exactly that when teams have got a young wide receiver on their team they think can pick up the slack, they're like, why will we do anything here? In fact, maybe we'll drop a few, but we're good. So not much changes. And the same way when they've got a player on the roster that isn't a young player, but they're very comfortable with, they don't add to the depth chart, so there's no one to compete. So there isn't a higher level competition, and the competent player like a Crowder and a Robbie Anderson are able to outcompete successfully these lower quality players. So I think that's why stability might produce the most breakouts. But again, it doesn't happen at a higher rate because most teams are stable compared to these situations where you're seeing a lot of targets or high target players or a lot of low target players leave or enter the depth chart. But that's my inkling right now. Just taking a second, honestly. I forgot I was on a live stream, not a podcast. I thought I could just leave it as silence and no one would know. But yeah, that's where I'm at with vacated targets. What is it you want to talk? You mentioned maybe talking about quarterbacks from this year's draft, right? Because I really think that covers, unless there's something I'm missing, and you should really let everyone know because I miss a lot of stuff that's valuable. But I think that's the decision between those two players. I do think you kind of have to pick one or the other. And I'm more comfortable taking the extra value on, like I said, Preston Williams. But again, I hate not having some exposure to Parker because you make a really good point. I mean, he did great finally, and he was a good prospect. So, is there anything else we should mention about him?
No, I think that's it. I mean, definitely Preston, cheaper, better value. And for me, it's about I'm willing to pay up a little bit more for that security blanket. Whether it's true or not, that's my perception of it. But yeah, that kind of breaks it down. I agree.
Which is pretty good. I do kind of want to make you're depending too much on quarterback to tell you stuff there. Like, I don't know Rosen versus Fitzpatrick, especially in terms of target rate, but I think I don't want to even be against your Parker argument because it's a good one. There's no reason we shouldn't want Parker at that value. It's actually pretty decent. But yeah, you were mentioning rookie QBs. I think you had.
Yeah, I mean, I think at Dynasty Beard, one of the guys on Twitter, he said that there's some noise about Joe Burrow not wanting to go to Cincinnati Bengals. So, kind of bringing up that Eli situation and working himself out of there.
Right.
I wonder, for me, it's like what fits better with someone like Parker? Is it a Joe Burrow? Is it a Tua? Is there even no difference? I don't know. I mean, these are the things I'm trying to think about in terms of like where I think that future of the team's going.
Bunk bed down, Alex says on YouTube. What up, y'all? Ain't there enough room for both RRs in Miami to thrive in Dynasty with Fitz and the new rookie? Shoot Gesicki too. No, we actually started out that the conversation with that, Alex. I actually really like Gesicki, especially going into his third year after what he did in his second year. I'm okay getting out with a slight value bump just because tight end is such a wasteland. But if I can't get more value than whatever I paid for him, then I'll just hold on to Gesicki. He's a fine flyer. And that's the problem. With a team like Miami, it's hard to... Top 24 wide receivers come from there, sure. Top 12 tight ends, sure. But if you're projecting multiple, I think you have to start to think about the team being phenomenally more productive than we imagine Miami's going to be. If you've got a top 12 tight end and 2 top 24 wide receivers, I mean... That's a really good dynasty team or NFL team to have in dynasty. How exciting was it to have some of Miami when Stephon Diggs and Thielen both broke out in that same team? They were phenomenally productive and they made a run for the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. I don't see that for Miami next year.
No.
So it's hard to project that many people doing that well. But I think they can all improve or solidify that they have some value in fantasy. So I do kind of want some of all of them. But I would split it up by dynasty teams for that exact reason. Like I don't want all of them. Kind of want to pick my bets from one dynasty roster to the next, based on where I can get them or the value. Does that sound right to you, Alex? Sorry, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to over leverage a bad or mediocre offense even on the same team. So if you want to get like leverage to different points of that offense, you want to spread it out across multiple teams.
That
Really
was a
cap
nice
the upside.
hedging answer by me, by the way. It's like I can't really be wrong there. I mentioned value, and unless like Miami really does blow up next year, and we'll be sitting here thinking, "Damn, we were so close to saying go get Miami players." But yeah, sorry, Mike, you were talking about Joe Burrow not wanting to go to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I
I've
mean,
I don't prospect quarterbacks that much. I rely on other people to do it much more. I mean, I have some metrics. That one that Josh Hermsmeyer makes and one that Sean Slavin does called TNEA that I think are really good for describing and explaining and even predicting how good a quarterback is at throwing the ball. And I do look at their rushing role as well because that's valuable for fantasy in the NFL as well, obviously. But like I don't have a model for them, so because frankly all of them suck. I've never seen a good
yeah,
outside of CPO from Josh and TNEA from Sean, I've never seen anything useful come out of rookie quarterback evaluation. And then when we get to the NFL, like I was saying about Miami, you need a good quarterback to have a good wide. You need an average quarterback most of the time to get a good wide receiver. But like we saw AJ Brown last year, he wasn't working with great stuff. He had amazing efficiency out of Tannehill, but I don't think that's why AJ Brown did well. If that makes sense, I usually see a disconnect between the quality of the quarterback and the quality of the wide receiver. You just need some level of volume and competence from that position for the wide receiver. As far as if it matters if he wants to go, I mean that's the thing about a draft, isn't it? you don't get a say, which kind of sucks.
yep.
I doubt he's going to tank his career because he's upset to be in Cincinnati's a wonderful place. He'll love it when he gets there, I'm sure.
I mean,
Do
it's
you
a good
think
place, but it's not a great front office. I would put it that way.
do you not think, like I know a lot of people that are really excited about that prospect as if that will make Tyler Boyd good instead of, the fact he's already good?
I mean, I think Tyler Boyd is already good. So
Yeah, exactly. So
was
I think he's good either way.
he was good with Dalton. I mean, he had the profile come out of college. He went to the NFL. He went through that progression period, and he's been great ever since. So I don't really have any boost or upwards or downwards for Tyler Boyd, regardless of who goes there.
Unless you deeply believe in vacated targets, which would be weird since AJ Green wasn't there last year. But I do think we could see a volume bump because kind of Boyd is due for it on his own merits. But he's not going to become an AJ Green. He's just going to continue to be a really good player.
Yep.
And so I want him. But I don't even know if Joe Burrow is good yet. That's kind of when I mentioned prospecting. I think he is. He looks amazing compared to his class and compared to other prospects, but so did a lot of wide receivers I no longer want my teams, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of effect do you think that should have on the way we view our draft, for example? Are you leaning Tua now, kind of a thing?
I mean, I was always Tua. It's just like comes down to health. I think if it wasn't for health, it wouldn't really be that particularly close, just given what Tua has done throughout his entire collegiate career. I mean,
is that why you value him more because he's done it more often, or have you seen more of it?
Yeah, I've seen him do more of it, and I've seen him do it like the second he walked on the field. And funny story, actually, like I learned about Tua watching this show called like Elite 11. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but basically they bring in all the high school quarterbacks. They bring in all the high school quarterbacks. Is like hosted by Trent Dilfer, and
that's awesome.
so basically all the top quarterbacks go through the program. So like your Andrew Luck's and Aaron Rodgers or whatever. And he actually like won that competition that year. So that's when I learned about Tua for the first time ever.
That's amazing. Can you say his last name?
Tagovailoa.
Sounds right. Sounds right to me.
I think that's right.
If not Tacit Assassin, Zach Reed's young son's got you covered. I'd check out that video. If I would, he's got it down. I can't. I can barely say Daniel Jones's name. So I'm like, I don't push my luck too much. Quarterbacks and landing spots. I'm trying to think of, like, I do plan to try to make a model, but I think it's going to end in disaster because that's what they normally do. Is there anywhere they could land? Like, I like Tua. I've got him ranked 1, and someone thought I was trying to be a hot ranker with it, and I was like, no, I've got nothing to go on at quarterback. I can see 2 good years before his injury from Tua, and I've got 1 amazing year from Burrow, and I actually prefer seeing it more often than a higher ceiling at quarterback. I've listened to a lot of good quarterback evaluators, and they say some of the things that matter are having experience and youth. So if you're very experienced and youthful, and that kind of fits the Tua profile as well, where he's just been the starter for more years. And that's why I lean Tua. It's not even the rushing upside. Burrow's not much of a rusher, right?
No, he's actually people will say sneaky rushing upside because he does run quite a bit actually. He's got my partner on Bunk Bed Breakdowns tweeted this. I forgot who it was, but I think he's got more broken tackles than Joshua Kelly, who's like a running back.
Really? That's awesome. I haven't seen broken or missing tackles data yet. I'm waiting for that to enter in my timeline. I think I saw someone mentioned the other day they were about to put it out, but that's amazing. The quarterback's got more than the running back. Is there somewhere you would rather Burrow go?
So like I was thinking about this the other day, and I think that maybe Bengals might be better early on just because of what they have, and like they have a running back already in Mixon who Burrow can dump off to like he did to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in college, and then they have obviously AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, and then on the depth part you have like John Ross and Auden Tate. But I just like something about the Bengals organization is just like it gives me the fits. I don't know if you ever saw the clip.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
But Mike Brown, the owner, like when asked about trading AJ Green, he's like, why would I trade to make other teams better? Like if that's the mentality that like a team has, that's not good for the future prospects of a young quarterback.
They've never been the smartest team, and also cheap. They're remarkably cheap for $1 million enterprise, millions of dollars enterprise, maybe billions. I honestly have no idea, but like it's remarkably cheap compared to other teams. Do you know John Bosch? Everyone knows John Bosch, right? Yeah. Never ask him about Cincinnati. You hear all about how terrible they are, frankly. He's not passionate about it. It doesn't upset him anymore. He's very adamant on this fact that it no longer upsets him anymore. But yeah, he can tell you some stories, man. I've been frustrated with them just because they tend to get good wide receivers. I think are fairly good prospects deep, and then they don't do much with them, or they turn up on the like Sanu and Marvin Jones, right? Mm-hmm. Turned up both at the same time. They've managed to do very little with them. They just like Sanu slide off the team.
Yep.
A lot of weird stuff. I think Gio has been incredibly underutilized. But to get back to players that people care about other than me, do you think this is a Mixon year, though? Joe Mixon's expectation for 2020, I think, is going to be a hot draft topic, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's one of those players that looks like he could,
Yeah, he's definitely fits the bill in terms of what he can do. And it's a bit contradicting for me to say this because I always say I fade running backs on like bad teams. But for some reason, I just can't quit Mixon. I love him as a prospect, and I've seen what he can do when he's given the volume. But big question marks there on O-line. At least they're getting Williams back this year. So that was a huge blow last year. I made a bunch of moves to like get Mixon when they added the O-line, and then he obviously lost him. So it's that. If Joe Burrow goes there, more hopeful in terms of like running back passing usage. But again, it's just like there's a lot of question marks for sure. But it's just one of those guys. Everyone has that guy they can't quit. And for me, that's Joe Mixon.
Sorry, someone just asked 2 questions I don't have the answers to. One, what's the bust rate for first-round QBs? And I imagine it's not great because they trust, especially lately, they've been drafting so many that haven't worked out. And the other one was minimum passing yards for 2 players on the same team. I don't know the minimum. Like I said, the average for players' depth charts with 2 breakouts, which actually wouldn't be Miami since Parker's already broken out technically.
Yep.
And I was only looking for players that break out the same year because that was the random data set I had up. That was the average was 594 pass attempts And Miami's been over 600 twice in the last 3 years, but it was under 500 in that middle year, which is kind of an aberrant year and probably not to be trusted. Do you have any better answers for that one? Like, I honestly don't know.
I don't have data on that, so I can't actually give a specific answer, unfortunately.
No, that's just overall breakouts. No, I don't have anything that I could quickly reach for. I can make something, and I can tell you that Miami's probably going to be ranked as outside the top 20 in passing attempts, and we've only had 64 wide receivers since 2007 in the top 24, or 64 top 24 seasons since 2007, whereas in the top 20 you've got over 200. So it's just, there is a connect. You need volume to get there. Not everyone can do it with efficiency. Like Godwin, actually, random question or random point here. Chris Godwin had to be remarkably efficient last year in order to get the season that he did. That kind of concerns me as, a guy who usually prospects through volume rather than efficiency, because efficiency is more likely to wax and wane over the years. I haven't really dug into that yet. I don't mean to drift off QB. I apologize, because it's a really interesting point, and you've got a really interesting piece of information that required a source, which is not normally the stuff I have. I just have so little to go on with QB. What I would say is players drafted outside the first round at QB, obviously, that's the main red flag. So Burrow and Tua, I think Tua is going to get first round draft capital, right? Any other kind of noise is just kind of draft because we've got nothing else to talk about, right?
Yeah, there's no way that there's 32 teams out there that are going to pass on Tua. Or I guess less than 30, because Miami has like 3 picks, but there's no way 30 teams are going to let Tua slip past. If they do, I pray to God they do, because if the Patriots are sitting there and Tua falls to them, I'm going to be the happiest man ever. But I just don't see it.
That's one of the things, like, until recently, where teams they do seem to have shaken it up a little bit, and it's positive, but it's produced some nasty things. Like, you used to be able to rely on pick for quarterback a lot more, because Herbert and Love, quarterbacks are so valuable, and there's so many teams in need of them. I wouldn't necessarily expect them to fall out the first round, because they've got a lot of promise. Even Eason. And there are plenty of teams that probably should be speculating on quarterbacks with that kind of profile, that quality. But maybe not the top of the class. But top of the class just means they've got everything. It doesn't mean necessarily the best, as we've seen before. So they should be speculating on those QBs. So they might not escape the first round. But where, especially recently, like Mitch Trubisky and some other teams like reach really high for quarterbacks, the noise has kind of entered the pick range as well. It used to be if a quarterback is drafted within the top 12, he's much more likely of breaking out than inside the top 32. And I think the noise of Mitch Trubisky and some others have kind of made that less reliable. But if you can discount those random moves by teams like Chicago, and I think we can, right? That's probably just those. Like, as long as Tua and Joe Burrow go very high in first round, that makes them even more likely to break out, I do think. And it will be a vote of confidence on his health, to be fair, since that seems to be the only thing anyone has to say that's bad about Tua. To be fair,
that's what I'm looking for, because like you have a lot of like Twitter doctors that are saying this is a career ending, whatever. To me, it's like I'm just gonna trust the team that makes the investment. If someone drafts him in the top 5, I'm gonna trust that they had their medical team go up, down, all over his body to make sure that he's okay. And that's kind of the same.
Right, exactly. Probably wearing a mask and using an extraordinary amount of hand sanitizer, but let's do that. We've got more Bedbunk fans than we have Crossroads fans in the chat. I'm very upset about that, but I thought you should know, Michael, that your podcast is far more popular. I'm having more comments, and we've got 5 watchers right now. That never happens. This is a Bedbunk thing. I've just seen Bedbunk and Crossroads, the crossover we needed. Apparently, we didn't even know. This is random. So thanks, Michael. You've made my podcast incredibly popular. I really appreciate that.
I doubt it, man. I doubt it. We just have a couple of crazy followers, so dedicated. Shout out to them. Love those guys.
Those are my favorites. Crazy attracts crazy. That's what I like to think.
Yep.
What were we even talking about in terms of fantasy? Oh, that's an interesting question, though. So I'm kind of being scatterbrained here. I'm not used to comments, guys. You're going to have to slow down. Amari Cooper signed an extension, and the Cowboys have the number 1 offense in the league last year, depending on how you measure
yeah,
it.
it depends on how you measure it.
Does this mean we've seen the best of Gallup last year? I have been working on projections this year, and he fell outside the top 24 when I just did my initial run. I didn't like it, so I went back in, pushed him back up. I don't know where he's going to land, but I really like Gallup.
Yeah, me too.
Like he's one of the players who did it through efficiency more than volume a little bit last year. But have you taken a look at the depth chart? Just if you're trying to make projections, like randomly, I sorted by team. I usually don't. And there was like 5 players. I was like, where the hell's the rest of the Dallas offense? So I went and looked. It's like, oh, no one cares about any of these guys. That's why there's like Noah Brown on there and some other players who are going to suck up targets. But there's almost no threat to Gallup and Cooper. Like it was pretty easy to push them both up to like 35 and 42% of the wide receiver targets. So don't get it confused with regular market share there. Because like I really don't think that I have many threats to those targets, but we've yet to see the NFL draft. It did make me wonder, like I would hate it. Like they don't need anyone else. But like with so many wide receivers we think have a really decent floor in this class, if they maybe swing on one with not the first round draft pick, but if I don't even know how many draft picks they have. I don't predict the drafts, so like I like to keep some things a mystery since I have no control over it, and it doesn't matter until it's over. Like I literally don't look at the draft or draft equity a lot myself, but I imagine the Dallas has like a 3rd round pick somewhere. They could really hit out the park with some of these wide receivers we think exist. They're probably going to be drafted on day 2, day 3. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. You really like Gallup as well, you said?
Yeah, I was actually, I mean, I don't know if this is stupid thought or not, but I did not think that Amari Cooper being there is bad for Gallup.
No,
because I think that like him facing softer coverage is just really good for him. And, you know, some guys can produce great fantasy stats and not be that alpha X wide receiver. And I'm totally cool with that. And I think Gallup really falls in that camp.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's a narrative you can say both ways, and they both make logical sense. Like this guy is going to just be the one, and therefore that's where all the targets, or he's going to suck up coverage, and you use whichever one you want. But what I can see is, on the whole, I think good players help good players, and I try and always take that point of view. Like, frankly, AJ Green being on the field helped Tyler Boyd. It's not more beneficial to him that AJ Green's gone, because I don't think Tyler Boyd steals, if targets work this way, AJ Green targets. He steals Joey Noni's targets that no one cares about, and steals Noah Brown's targets. Or that's where the passing attempts end up instead of those deeper players. And AJ Green's fine, and Tyler Boyd's ceiling, like it's a little easier to get there without a Green. But also there are less first downs, less red zone trips, because AJ Green's amazing. And it's the same for Cooper and Gallup. Like Cooper is going to help out Gallup in the same way Gallup helps out Cooper, because they're both good. And where there's such a lack of competition outside of those two players, I mean, maybe one of the, like Noah Brown had some decent touters in his rookie season, I seem to remember. Or even Zeke takes up another, like he's done that before. I mean, it can happen. But I don't think they're a threat to each other. I think good players on the same team means more team success, and that's good for every player on the team. Like I think one of the reasons Marquez Brown had a top rookie season really last year that everyone's discounting is because he was on a really good team. It's not like if they were more of a passing team, he would have been a top 5 wide. Like that's not the logic. The being on a good team helps Marquez Brown. And that's why, you know, top 24 wide receivers kind of cluster on high passing offenses or effective passing offenses. When they're on low passing offense, it tends to be somewhere like Marquez Brown that are on an exceptionally good team. And I was looking at this the other day, and I've been told like bad teams with low wins, right? They pass more often because they're trying to win. And I know that's true, but I couldn't find it in year-to-year pass attempts. What I found is like teams with 5 or less wins and teams with 10 or more wins pass for a relatively similar amount on average if you look over a decent, 7-8 year sample size. So where I'm missing the signal there, because I know it's there. It's one of the things that's been proven by smarter people than me. But like low passing teams that win or are doing well tend to pass less, right? I'm not wrong on that.
Yeah, I mean, but unless you're like the Kansas City Chiefs, how much do you believe in establishing the
Yeah,
run
right. That's fair.
versus the Chiefs? I think like maybe I have to dig in the data to actually get more details, but like to me, logically, it makes sense that the top teams are passing more now because passing is more efficient and results in more wins. So if you're at the top of the league, you're passing more because you're trying to win, like the Chiefs. And if you're at the bottom of the league, you're trying to pass more because you're trying to catch up. So logically, that could make sense why there isn't as big of a delta there between the two.
I might have just been taking too big of a sample. That's one of the things where the NFL does change in these periods, and it's really hard to account for it. And lately, we've seen a lot of changes. One of the things that I struggle with is before we can call something a trend, it's already here. If you know what I mean, it's hard to get ahead of the curve numerically. I really think, are we targeting more Tyler Boyds and Calvin Ridleys more often now? Or is that just a dearth of Julio Joneses in the league? And we target running backs at a higher rate right now, but is that just a blip, or will it continue to be a trend? Is there anything right now that you think is a trend or is going to be a trend moving forward? Like someone was pointing out that I was on another podcast the other day, and they asked a question where is the NFL targeting more smaller, more athletic wide receivers lately? I really didn't know how to handle the question because I was like, smaller isn't a thing. We just think it's a thing because we've had Calvin Johnson in our head for so long and Julio Jones. Like there was never a period where it was dominated by large Calvin Johnson wide receivers. There was just those two. That's it. And we got it into our head that there was a period where that was true. It's just those guys, really. So the question didn't make sense to me. But am I wrong on that, or is there something else going on right now that you do think is a trend before we can really establish it as a pattern that's changed the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that I believe it was Ray who tweeted it out, and it's like, is it a trend that NFL teams are now passing on running backs? They're no longer taking like Todd Gurley's and Fournette, and do we have to adjust for that? I mean, like you said, I think it's probably too early to do that because like you have to also isolate for like the talent level in the class, which I know is like impossible to do. But if we see, let's say this year, right? Let's say both Swift and Jonathan Taylor like fall out of the first round. Is that enough to say that trend is here and we should start thinking about running back the same way, or is it not enough? Like, how do you think about stuff like that?
Usually I like to see a pattern over a 3-year period, which is by the time you see that, most of the values eked out of it because draft our ADP changes remarkably quickly. The way dynasty, especially in dynasty, players have gotten a lot smarter. They're aware of almost anything. I've been noticing more and more that despite always feeling like the minority punching up, there are a lot more people, and that might just be my small bubble, that think of data and collecting information than they think of watching the tape and just assessing their gut feeling. So, that's an uncomfortable feeling for me. I don't like being part of the majority. I might have to start watching tape if this feeling persists. To be honest with you, like I'm not going to do it. Not going to. I think it's just because nerd attracts nerd, to be honest with you. But like dynasty players are remarkably smart. So by the time you've seen it 3 years in a row, like they've already adjusted their ADP. You're not going to catch them out.
Exactly.
There is an increasing amount of slot targets going on and wide receivers being the number one scoring offense if they have more slot targets. This is something that's gone back and forth with Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs a lot, to mention those two again. Like whoever got the slot targets was the best wide receiver that week or that year for that matter. But again, it's just, it could switch back next year and suddenly it doesn't look like a trend at all because we haven't seen it for 3 years. But it is an interesting thing to track. Same with the running back usage. So I haven't
like there's just like there hasn't been a Julio level prospect, like if there was a Julio or if there was a Megatron, teams would jump on that like
oh
you
yeah,
know what I mean?
right.
So it comes down to like what's coming out of college as well. So like it's like hard to dissect like is it a trend or is it just like lack of availability of that type of player?
Do you think we can address our drafting that way? Okay, this isn't a Julio year, so we're looking for a Jarvis Landry. We're not looking for a Calvin Johnson. And therefore, someone like Justin Jefferson, for example, that might be the top 12 guy. Yeah. Or the fact that CeeDee Lamb is a little undersized compared to most average top 12 wide receivers, where the NFL is kind of leaning that way right now, and this draft class backs that up. Essentially, what I'm asking is, you do see a lot of top 12 upside in this class? I don't.
I mean, I think I would say I see more like breadth. So I would say like I see more like top 24 seasons than like that one guy who's gonna just be like a perennial wide receiver one, like Julio Jones and the OBJs of the world. So I think there's like if I'm in a draft, right, how I'm gonna handle it is I'm gonna try and trade back and throw more darts and try and throw the one on the wide receiver that I think is really good.
Yeah, Don Black is agreeing with us. Slot wide receivers can be wide receiver ones. Look at Welker and Edelman. But it's interesting you have to reach that far, since there were 3 last year that did it.
Yeah.
Jarvis Landry has done it repeatedly over the last couple of years, and we still think it's only a Patriots thing. Like, it's been happening a lot lately.
Yeah, it's been happening a ton.
You know, I had a bet going with Matt Williams. He's part of so many things, like the FF Mercenaries, I think is his main thing right now. He was part of the FF Statistics, who've now been rolled into DLF along with us. But Matt Williams, really good follow, really interesting guy to talk to about football. And I had a bet going with him about Curtis Samuel's percentage of targets in 2020. Now, I was definitely right that you had to make the decision, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel. Again, pick one. One's going to be in the top 24. I'm riding with DJ Moore. I think that value difference, I'd rather have DJ Moore. That's you took Parker this time. In that instance, I took DJ Moore. I was right on that instance, but his overall usage was phenomenally high considering the running back, the tight end, and the wide receiver one usage. Like, that rarely happens. And it might be part of this recent trend that there's the guys being used at a lower ADOT. Just getting more usage. Even when you've got a Calvin Ridley, even when you've got a Christian McCaffrey on the team, who recently just got paid, by the way.
Big ups to CMC. He definitely deserves
it. I do. I actually just want to ask you myself what you think about Stephon Diggs going to Buffalo. Like, the only guy I've been able to talk to about it at all has been Addison Hayes, and we tend to think way too similarly anyway. So, yeah, we agreed with each other, and it wasn't a big surprise. Are you hopeful for Stephon Diggs there? Like, my initial model wanted to jack him into the top 12, and I was like, model, you don't understand. It's Buffalo. And we had a stern talk, because his usage is going to shift going to a new team. That's part of my vacated time. But anyway, sorry, I'm going to just stop talking and ask you what your smart opinion on it is.
Yeah, I mean, it might be similar to you guys, but whenever like wide receivers switch teams in the initial year, I'm usually just not as bubbly about them. And then stack on top of that, like, Josh Allen's just not a very good passer. So obviously John Brown overcame that, but John Brown's just a very good player to begin with. And not saying Stephon Diggs, obviously also a really good player, but if you put two of them in a low passing volume offense with a low efficiency, not very good quarterback, I feel like it's a pretty big risk for me, I think.
Yeah, essentially, we didn't think one of the best route runners to ever play, being in the right places at the right time it's going to be good. Best thing when the ball isn't. But look, and I'm not going to become a truther for Buffalo, but there was vast improvement there. I admitted that. Like, I didn't see that amount of improvement, but that amount of improvement brought them up to bad.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I mean, when you're starting from the floor, I mean, there's a lot of room to grow. So, I mean, Josh Allen has grown. There's no denying that, but you're going from like really bad to like kind of bad. You're still well below average, and you're coming from Kirk Cousins, who I think is criminally underrated as a passer.
Really is, right? Everyone hates Kirk Cousins. And I did to start with, and he's got a remarkable tendency for interceptions. But hell, we got over it with Jameis Winston for last year's ride. Yeah. So I think maybe we should stop doing that.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not even close to Jameis Winston. I think people just remember the fact that he has turnovers at very unfortunate times, and that really sticks in their minds, and he loses big games. But if you look at like his career over the average, I mean, he's a remarkably accurate passer that doesn't really turn the ball over that much.
And productive. Like, one of my arguments going to last season was like his lowest level of pass attempts is still 10% more than we can possibly adjust him down. Like, there was not really a good reason to be concerned from what I could see statistically about the volume there. Then, Mr. Cooks just ate my lunch, so that was that. But what was I going to ask you? There was something else that I just want answers to. I like to hear other people's ideas because, eventually when you're just talking about it with yourself too much, you just keep getting the same answer and it's really frustrating. We're talking about Josh Allen. God, this is why it should just be a podcast and not a live stream. You get to see how much my mind stumbles when I'm trying to remember what I was literally just trying to say. Now it's gone. No, completely gone. Yeah, okay. So you don't see a lot of top 12 upside in this wide receiver class either. Do you think it's a wide receiver year, though? More than a running back year? Or is this just the best / weirdest draft class ever where it's both? Because that's what everyone wants to say. Because, I admit there's great prospects on both sides of the ball. But historically, I can't remember a class when we had, exceptional players at both positions.
Yeah, that's true. Now that you brought that up, it is very rare. I like the running back class a little bit more because it's top heavy. It is, but I think the wide receiver class is a lot deeper. So, but it's like I would say like it just doesn't have that like generational type of talent. I like the 2021 class a lot more. I think you will too once you
like the 21.
2021.
It's interesting. Class. That's the one I've been warned off about from Travis May and star prospect type concerns, and he's more interested in the 2022 class, I think. But who knows? That's half remember memory from a DM, so don't quote me on that, Travis. I'm sorry if I'm misremembering you, but I think that's what he said. I really like Bateman, but then again, I really like Tyler Johnson, and I have no idea what's going on there. So maybe Minnesota is just fooling me all over again. It's like the reverse of Ohio. Yeah, where productive players there don't. Sorry.
NFL teams love the stuff that you can't prove, like the juice. And according to them, Tyler Johnson doesn't have the juice. So there's your problem with Tyler Johnson. Promise you, Bateman doesn't have that problem. So you'll be excited about that. But I just meant coming from a numbers perspective. Like I know, focus on like market share, like breakout type stuff is a pretty impressive class in 2021.
Is there a player you're targeting, not to let all your secrets out the bag or anything, but not even thinking rookies right now, but what's your off-season move? By this time, I don't know where you're at, but like I feel like I've at least ran out of research time. It's trying to start about, that's a weird sentence. I've got to start focusing on the 2020 season. Fun time of just.
I think he froze.
I mean,
you froze there for a second, so I actually.
Can you hear me again?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sorry, now you froze. Yeah, I was just asking you, what's your off-season move? At this point in the season, like, it's time to start turning towards 2020. I really enjoy the small few weeks I get to just have fun, but now it's time to start projecting. It's time to start thinking about what's going to happen and making dynasty roster moves. Yep. So is there one player or one move you're looking at right now?
Yeah,
over the others.
I've been like sending out just a bombardment of trades throughout all my leagues in the past week or so. So I basically go and analyze all my rosters, see what I want to do on my championship rosters. I'm kind of looking to trade down and get younger assets. So for example, I think I traded out of like DeAndre Hopkins and Keenan Allen and got like Ridley, Sanders, and DK. So I'm always looking for moves like that across my roster. Sanders is someone that I've been looking at, pretty interested in, and especially when I'm looking to like trade down of like a stud running back. So trying to get like Sanders plus something back to add more depth. That's one move that I've been doing.
What's going on here, man?
Sorry?
What was the move? I missed it. It went blank for a second.
Oh, just like trying to acquire some youth. So, Miles Sanders is someone that's been piquing my interest a little bit on the young running back side.
That's an interesting name. I still see top 24 running back, not 12 running back, which is why I'm no longer kind of overly interested in Sanders. But I do think he acquired more of the role than the naysayers of the Pedersen offense or whatever it is were saying. Like, he definitely have a larger role than most running backs we've seen in that offense recently.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's impressive. Again, considering career
think he froze again. Oh, and you're kind of back.
Sorry, I'm losing you, man. Sorry, I was enjoying this conversation, but apparently my internet sucks again all of a sudden. So let me make sure I get something like an outro in here. And also read all these questions that just turned up. I'm telling you, the Bunk Bed Fantasy Podcast is got fans, man. They're all over here. Could you tell us all where we can find you, where we can find your work, what you're working on right now, and everything else about Michael Liu and how awesome you are before we get out of here?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but you can find me at Mike Mike Meupp up on Twitter. So I'm always on there shooting the shit with people. You know, if you want to ask questions, whatever you want, that's cool. I do, you know, writing for DLF, and then also I have the podcast called Bunk Bed Breakdowns over at BDG Fantasy. So we're mostly on YouTube, but we do convert to podcasts as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I'll be working a lot on the draft guide. We just released it, bigdogsdraftguide.com, and we're kind of like periodically releasing stuff. Obviously, after the draft, it's going to be a ton of work and updating to try and get all those profiles out. But yeah, that's where you can find us. And then lastly, the Discord. You can find that on my Twitter. But if you join the Discord channel, it's just a community, a bunch of guys. So probably some of the guys on in your channel right now are from the Discord chat. And we're just on there talking fantasy, joining new leagues, and just having fun, man. That's pretty much it.
Thanks, Michael. Really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks to everyone for checking out the Dynasty Crossroads, especially all the Bunk Bed fans apparently online, which suddenly made my chat popular. Hopefully I'll get to talk to you again soon, and I'll talk to everyone else next week. Thanks. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you.
Michael, no, I'm not done. I was just making sure I had an ending. I didn't know about the BDGE or Top Dog Dynasty on YouTube. Actually, it was someone on Twitter sent me a DM, and he was asking about my work, and then he was like, have you checked out these guys? And so I had no idea there was such a big platform on Dynasty for Twitter. I was like, oh, wow, look at that. On YouTube, sorry. Yeah. Like my little crappy snowy basement videos really look shit compared to those guys. Awesome. But yeah, then I got into you, followed you. I've been consuming a lot of your content. I think you guys are doing great work over there. Got a lot of fans of that draft guide as well. Like one of them even passed my way. It's a small corner of Dynasty Twitter heard about you. It's got to be doing pretty well. Bunk Bed Fantasy. What do you guys mostly talk about?
I mean, we just talk all things Dynasty. So
it's mostly
Dynasty. Basically, when me and Noah was at FB God, we got together probably in March, I think. We laid out the NFL calendar, and then we just like try to plan out what pieces of content would tie to like different timings. So during draft time, during free agency period, we talk about free agency. Right now, we're talking about like startup strategy and like stuff like that. And then post draft, we'll obviously be talking about the prospects. And then during the combine, we talked about the combine. So just like all things Dynasty, you know, trade strategy, like data, film, whatever.
Where's the name come from, man? I was trying to piece it together.
Because my co-host, he's in college still. So back in the videos, you'll see a bunk bed behind him. So we decided to go with that. It's nothing.
Why not run with it?
Nothing to do with Dynasty, but we decided to roll with it.
That's nice. I have no idea what my podcast's about other than Dynasty either. So it's good to see I'm not alone. Initially had an idea, and that was the name of the show, just the crossing over of different ideas from film and analytics. And then my film guy left. So I'm like, guess it's just me. I'm trying to make it up since then. It's been a lot of fun, but the name no longer makes much sense, to be honest. So it's good to know I'm not alone there. Although Bunk Bed, that's a much better story, I have to say, than my co-host no longer wanted to talk to me. It's pretty easy. I do have a complaint, though, Michael. We disagreed on a player, and you got in no way negative, aggressive, or at all rude. It was very upsetting. Like that was just a calm, rational conversation about two different players and why they both probably are worth their ADP. Like that was way too mainstream fantasy for me.
I'll bring the heat next time. If it's someone I'm passionate about, like I like Parker, I'm not passionate about him, but if we clash on something more passionate, I'll be sure to bring the heat.
No, I wasn't claiming you're not passionate. I was just you're just way too nice compared to me. I'm like, I'm gonna call you. I'm going to tell you you're wrong and your team's going to suck just because you didn't draft Preston Williams and no opportunity to do that whatsoever. You were just polite and perfectly rational. It's like, damn it. I'm almost hoping that someone's going to not be that sometimes because I like that idea, you know. I think that makes for a good podcast when two people are just like, no, you suck. But everyone's constantly nice and calm and rational. I'm like, damn it. I was kind of hoping. Yeah, right. Crossover 27 just asked us if Jerry Jeudy goes to the 49ers. Is that a concern? And he's talking specifically because there's other good players like Kittle is obviously his role. We don't expect to go anywhere. Debo did really well. Do you have anything on that? I do, but
I mean, I don't like if a player is good. Like I said, like I like good offenses. You know, like if a player is good and you have a good coach that knows how to utilize certain skills, I like that. Whether Kittle's there, whether Judy's there, whether the Debo's there, like that, I would much rather have that than Jeudy go to the Jets with a coach that doesn't know how to use their player strengths and like doesn't put him in the situation to win. So that's kind of like my view. Like if they go to a good team, I love that.
Yeah, that's actually what I'd say. I prefer better than worse. And actually, I thought you were literally going to say my thought, which is the player's good, so I want him. Like, I don't really care. Yeah. Situations change a lot more than player talent. And I keep getting the fantasy douche quoted back at me when I say that by Michael Zingoni, FS Zinger on Twitter. It's a really good point that at the NFL level, the talent level, the variance is less than the college level, for example. I mean, he used to say that the talent is relatively level, but I really do think you can see dramatic spikes. And that, to me, that just emphasizes the difference makers of Julio Jones and Antonio Brown with this even high value talent level. For some players to stick out and stick down is really significant. I think it makes it more significant. But yeah, overall, if they go to a good situation, I'm good with that. I wouldn't worry about crowding if I really do think the player's good. If you're going to get multiple fantasy assets that are valuable, the most likely situation for that to happen is a really good team. I'm not sold on Jimmy G, but I think if Debo's as good as some people think he is, I think he's got a lower ceiling than most people think. Yeah. But and Kittle's definitely phenomenal. Like they help each other. I really do think that. And I don't switch that when it doesn't fit my narrative, right? That's the only way I avoid that being a narrative argument because I consistently see it, and it's not going to be. I wouldn't say that hurts another player in another situation. If it's a good team with good players, that helps the player. The other, pardon me, I don't have coronavirus. I swear to God, it just a cough. Anyway, what I was going to say, situation changes. I think. Despite the level playing field potential of NFL talent, I think situations change a lot more drastically, even if passing attempts are relatively consistent year to year. And the quality and the efficiency of an offense, players come on and off the depth chart through injury, coaches are less and more successful year over year, excessively more often than player talent fades and wanes. As we talk, draft capital is the other thing you have to include in that. But if I've got a good player and what I think is a terrible situation for him, I go through who's a good player, and I just take the discount. That does mean I don't get someone like Terry McLaurin because I didn't think he was good and he was going to a bad situation, so I didn't still target him. But if you like Terry McLaurin, it would do it for you. It didn't get me someone that I do think was elevated by the situation like Jamison Crowder and Robbie Anderson. But it also means that if AJ Brown, was my guy last year, and he was one of my top 3-4 wide receivers, I didn't care that he went to Tennessee. I just think you have more success not worrying about the situation so much because it changes. It's like Aaron Jones being consistently played behind Jamal Williams, but I really thought Aaron Jones had the talent. And Jamal Williams is a very good player, and at the time I knew that, but I just kept trying to stock up on Aaron Jones because situations change, and I think this player can really do something if the situation changes in his favor. So, that's the way I would always think through those type of situations. Do I really believe in the player? And it's hard to know. If you're middling, it's really hard to know which way to go on a player evaluation. But So in that situation, it gets a little more complicated. But if I really believe in the player, I'm just going to take a discount, hopefully, and hope the situation changes. That's what's really frustrating me with that N'Keal Harry right now. I really do think the talent's there. Like, I hate his NFL production, but I think it's there. But hopefully the situation changes. But it was so bad as a rookie. It was so bad. But the situation has changed dramatically. So that's one of the situations. But I'm not getting a discount. That's why I don't like it. Like, no one's falling for it. No, you're not getting cheap N'Keal Harry off me. But he was so bad his rookie year. I'm not falling for it. And that's what frustrates me. It's not that you should do that. It's just that it frustrates me because normally you get a value difference. And I want to go that route. I need a value on it, if you know what I mean. If I'm betting on the player in a bad situation or a situation I think's bad for them, I kind of can only justify it if I'm getting a little bit of extra value on it somehow.
Yeah,
and that goes to Preston Williams a little bit, I guess, maybe, but Parker's value too. So
yeah, it's always like the situation. I mean, I actually do think situation matters a lot, but it's like it's different depending on if you're a wide receiver or like a running back, right? Like, and what that situation changes be. Is a situation that, look, you landed in a spot where there's someone that's really good ahead of you, or there's someone that's ahead of you on the depth chart. I'm more than willing to just put all my chips in for the talent in those situations. But then you get someone like David Montgomery where he lands in a spot where not only does he have players ahead of him, he's got a terrible O-line, he's got terrible quarterback play. There's like so many things to overcome that even though I think he's good, given the shelf life for running backs, like, are you willing to wait the 2 to 3 years, which basically like 40% of their peak production, to wait for it to happen?
Yeah, with Montgomery, I saw a decent player, but it could go either way with this. And like you say, it's different from running back to wide receiver, to be fair. And in that way, the situation should maybe affect you a little bit more because they have such short windows to produce as well. Like last year, we had two weird ones, right? Parker, and one that's less mentioned, I think, is Derrick Henry. Henry doing that much that far into a running back career, I think, is almost as unlikely as Parker. I haven't run the numbers on that one, so don't quote me. But like most of the time, we see production early for running backs, especially with draft capital, right?
Yep, exactly. And it's always funny, like the point that you brought up about N'Keal Harry discount is like when wide receivers tank their first year, if they had a good profile and good DC and good image coming in, their value holds a little bit more steady than running backs. Because if a running back tanks first year, like it's over. Like look at like Rashad Penny. Look at Rashad Penny compared to like Corey Davis. Corey Davis after his rookie year was still like a 3rd, 4th round startup pick.
He was wide receiver 25 in his second season, okay? It wasn't nothing. I'm just saying he was better than a lot of people who were trying to tank him said. He just wasn't quite the player I was hoping him to be.
No, I get it, but I'm saying like value-wise.
No,
like
you're right.
You have a way bigger runway to not mess it up. With running back, like if you mess it up, that's it. Like people just write you off.
Yeah, sometimes there's just no new way of saying something. It's like, look, you want points, running back. You want value, wide receiver.
Yeah.
Where are you at in your dynasty roster? That kind of makes that decision for you. Like I say, that is a good point. The immediate situation is more relevant for running back because they can affect it so much less than wide receiver. You basically need to be Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley to affect a situation to address a degree. Like Barkley's been great, and I don't think we're going to say that New York has been a great situation for him.
Nope.
Oh, that was it. I was going to ask you, see you later, Spaceman. I was going to ask you about Odell Beckham because he's one of those things that occasionally crosses my filter. I'm like, wait, do people think that? Is that like he's still easily a top 5 dynasty wide receiver for me? I'm like, what? There's nothing bad here. Like, I get that he was down season in his first year on a new team, but he still had over 1,000 yards. He had an amazing chunk of that offense and tough strength of schedule year with Baker Mayfield struggling a little bit. Like I've never seen anything bad from that guy. And I also don't understand why he's one of those players that people seem to target and go, that guy isn't good. I don't like him. I'm going to take every opportunity to throw a narrative that now is when he's suddenly going to be bad. And it just seems some guys people pick out and it becomes a thing where they just keep saying he's bad until it's true. And it might be 3 years after, so they miss 3 years in a row, but eventually he's going to be bad. But
when he's like 33 years old, like, see, I told you Odell was bad.
Yeah, right. Am I missing something? Like I miss a lot. Like I get a lot wrong, but I had no idea there was this thought that Odell Beckham wasn't a top 5 wide receiver anymore. Am I missing? Did I miss something?
Look, I think whenever you have guys that like fall so far from grace, the narrative are really strong, right? Like
that might be it.
He was 2 years ago. He was like arguably the 1.01 in Dynasty. Last year, he was like a top 5 wide receiver, first round starter pick. And whenever someone spends a lot of capital on it, and they get burned. Everyone's like, well, screw that. I'm out of here. Right. So it's like a totally emotional roller coaster. Like you have like injuries, you have like, and then like everyone jumps on every little thing. Like, oh, he's bad character. He's a bad teammate. Right. Stuff that literally none of us even know. Right. We're all just like dudes on Twitter. Like we don't know his character. Like we don't know this stuff. So I think that's like a big part of it. And then for me, like I still really like OBJ. But for me, like I just don't draft like wide receivers early anymore, man. Like I just when I'm sitting there in a
normally trying to win, right?
Yeah. I just don't do it. Like the like scoring differential is just so minuscule that it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, you have to have an OBJ in 2014 for it to really matter that and he was a rookie, so you weren't drafting him high anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, again, if you're trying to win, you go running back, you want points, and then wide receivers have value anyway, so even getting them later doesn't hurt you too bad.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, despite being a wide receiver guy and zero running back guy, and people are letting you do it right now, and it's been true the last 2 years. Like the effect of realizing this has been to ramp up the ADP of the top 24 running backs, which wasn't the top 12. Those are the guys that we're talking about. The top 24, forget them. Like they've always had more value than they have worth, because running back 2 you can cobble together if you really have to, or you find an Austin Eckler.
Yep.
And so even as a 0 RB guy, it's been remarkably easy to just drop in the first round, stick with running back. If they let another one fall, take another running back, and then hit wide receiver consistently. Yep. It's been an ADP change more than a 0 RB philosophy change, just because I've only got DLF ADP to work with. It's the only one I trust, since we are DLF bros. I'll mention that. But that's what's been happening over the last 3 years. The reaction to this running back scoring, or the realization of it, has been to ramp up running backs 13 to 24 into higher and higher ADPs, which means more and more misses, frankly. At the same time, the wide receivers remain fairly static. So, sorry, I didn't mean to go into that.
I used to be a zero RB guy too, and like I always viewed it like you're not really a 0 RB guy. You're just a best player available guy, right? Like 0 RB was born because everyone just started drafting a bunch of running backs in that range that weren't that good and left a bunch of wide receivers fall to talent. So I think it's just like I don't call myself a 0 RB, 0 wide receiver. Like I'm just trying to draft the best players and build the best roster.
That's it, man. We were just measuring what makes the best player with BPA and how it fell out of favor. It's because no one thought to actually accurately decide who is actually the best player, and it's not quarterbacks score more points, for example. We needed a late round QB revolution to figure that one out. Yeah. And I think there's going to be one at wide receiver here soon, because, like you said, I don't know what the differential is, but I do know the wide receiver scoring, especially with the lack of influx of Julio Joneses, has really leveled out.
Yeah. I think JJ Zachariason covered it pretty well, like the death of like the workhorse. People talk about workhorse running backs, but like the target hog wide receivers, they're getting like lower and lower each year too. So you're just getting more. That's why that mid-range value wide receiver is so good. You get guys like Gallup, Ridley, like all these guys, just fantastic value. If I were to ask you like what the scoring differential is between Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones is on a points per game basis, do you know what it is?
No idea. No,
it's less
relatively flat. Yeah, right.
Less than 1 point per game.
That makes sense. I forget the way Jordan McNamara phrased it, but it was something like, there's relatively little difference between the wide receiver 23 and the wide receiver 12 or something crazy.
Yeah,
it's like it doesn't matter.
doesn't
It's
matter.
really, all the wide receiver, even in the top 12. It's like, yeah, that actually makes sense based on what we've been seeing. We lost Calvin Johnson and Antonio Brown, and Julio's trying to hold it together all by himself, and he can't. He's just one man. He's holding up a franchise. He can't hold up all of Dynasty as well. But anyway, Michael, sorry, I know we've been on for over an hour now. Do you need to get out of here or anything?
I got to dip in like 10 minutes to do something, but yeah.
Yeah, I know you missed your food and everything. I'm just keep getting. Yeah. I really enjoyed talking to you, though, man. It's nice to finally talk to you instead of just troll you on Twitter. That's a nice change.
No,
but I appreciate you coming on, man. Don't appreciate you being polite, nice, informative, and intelligent, because that's hard to argue against. But I do appreciate you coming on. I keep trying to talk over to you. I'm trying to get better.
No, I'm just saying that. Thanks for having me, man. I messaged you the day I joined DLF. I said I was a big fan, big reason why I joined and moved over to see if I can learn some stuff. So yeah, pretty cool to be on the Crossroads pod with you. Just shooting the shit. Had a good time.
Anytime, man. I didn't even remember that. Whenever anyone says they're a fan of mine, I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to not register that because it doesn't make sense to me at all. But yeah, it's great to get to talk to you, man. I'm glad you came over. I'm glad I converted you to the dark side, which is my ultimate goal for most people. And yeah, anytime, man, come back on. I need interesting people to talk to. So I really appreciate it, dude.
For sure.
And thanks.
All right, man. See you later.
Take care, man. Go eat some food.
I'm definitely going to crush some food later.
See you, man. Thanks for everyone for checking it out. Seriously, that was a lot of comment. That was more than I was expecting. We're down to 2 watchers right now. I assume it's because Michael left, and that was a very good decision. I really appreciate you guys. I have to get out of here too, because I've been avoiding Easter. I have to get back to it. Thanks very much, and I will see you again next time.